Is something coming now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Then let us start. So, first I will try to briefly explain again that we discussed voltage regulation in our last class. Now, in the case of testing transformer, you can see in figure 1, this voltage regulation plays a very important role. Now, I will explain why. Now, you can see the testing transformer here, where the low voltage winding gets supply from a normal variable low voltage source, and the secondary is the high voltage winding. Typically, the voltage is quite high, of the order of hundreds of kilovolts. Now here I have shown two capacitances. One is CL, another is CSH. Now what are these two capacitances? Now it is written here at the bottom of the figure that CL is load capacitance. Now you can ask me, what is load capacitance? Now I told you that these testing transformers are used for testing the insulation of equipment, not the conductors or not the magnetic materials. Now, whenever we apply a voltage across an insulation, it acts as a capacitor. So, therefore, this any equipment that we are testing that is here at the output will act as a capacitive load on the testing transformer, and that is CL. And from object to object, it varies. For example, if it is a porcelain insulator, CL will be very low. If it is a cable, CL will be considerably higher, like that. But then this testing transformer also has its shunt capacitance between its turns, and etc. So we cannot neglect it. Why? Because the value of CS, although it is not high, you have to remember that the CL is also not that high. So when CSH comes in parallel with CL, they are added and the value is definitely changed. Now, that's why the equivalent circuit, if I draw now, of course, this is not the exact equivalent circuit because I am not considering the magnetizing branch of the transformer. So we are considering only the series leakage impedance of the transformer. So R equivalent and L equivalent, because there are two windings, so we have to take the equivalent values of the two windings. And then C equivalent is the equivalent capacitance of here CSH and CL. Now here in figure 2, this V1 prime is nothing but the uh, voltage at the secondary terminal of the transformer. That means here on the high voltage side. You know that transformer voltages can be always represented either in terms of primary or in terms of secondary. So here we are representing everything in terms of the secondary, that is the high voltage side in this particular case. Whereas the voltage across the C equivalent, as you can see from figure 1, that is the actual voltage that is appearing across the test equipment. So, or we can say that is output voltage, and that is V2. If I have to now find out what is the relationship between V1 prime, that is the transformer terminal voltage, and what is the voltage that appears across the output or the test equipment, then we have to find out what is the current flowing I and what is the voltage appearing across this equivalent impedance. Now, the current I is quite clearly with respect to the V2, the output voltage will be 90-degree leading. 90-degree leading, that is quite obvious. So, let me show you therefore the phasor diagram, that here I am drawing the phasor diagram with V2 as reference. Then I'm drawing I 90-degree leading. And then in order to get V1 prime, I have to add I into the Z equivalent with V2. That means V2 plus I into REQ plus Ji into XQ will become V1 prime. So that's what is done here. You can see the equation. So IREQ will be in phase with I as shown. Then Ji omega LEQ, which is the inductive voltage, is naturally it will be current I will be 90-degree lagging with respect to this inductive voltage. So this is the direction, and therefore this is V1 prime. Now what is happening here is that this inductive voltage is becoming in phase opposition to V2. And as a result, what happens? V1 prime becomes less than V2. In other words, that the voltage regulation becomes negative. How do I get these voltage regulations? Now, one thing, let us do it in this way that we know that V1 prime here it is written as V2 plus IR equivalent plus J into I omega L equivalent. But for all practical purposes, this resistance R equivalent is much lower than the reactive part, that is omega L equivalent. So if we neglect that part, then as you can see where my mouse is moving, this will be the whole equation for V1 prime. Now what about I? Now I will be, if you look at this circuit, I will be V2 divided by reactance of the capacitance, XC equivalent. So that's what is written here. I is V2 divided by XCQ, and I get an expression here. And then if I put that in this equation for V1 prime, you get this expression. This J into J becomes -1. So voltage regulation as per our formula, the terminal voltage minus, I mean the no load voltage, that means when I is not flowing, the terminal voltage will be V1 prime. When the load is there, the terminal voltage is V2. So V1 minus V2 by V2, this becomes the voltage regulation. Interestingly, if you compute the per unit impedance of this transformer, this becomes I into Z equivalent by V2. Again, we go back to this one here. The per unit impedance is the voltage drop across this at rated voltage and divided by the rated voltage. So that's what is per unit impedance. And here if you put the value of I, what we have found here, in this where at the top of the screen, then you will find that per unit impedance becomes this. Now, if you look at the expression for voltage regulation and if you look at per unit impedance, you will find there is some relationship, which is nothing but that voltage regulation is minus Z, which means if the per unit impedance is high, the voltage regulation will be also high. And I have already told you that the testing transformers have typically higher per unit impedance of the order of 20%. That means 0.2. So if you put that here, you will find that V2 will be almost 25% higher than V1 prime. Now, this is very interesting because see, if we just, perform the test in this way, like I will show here. See, for example, we know the turns ratio of this transformer, and then if I apply a voltage X on the low voltage side and multiply it by turns ratio, we get a high voltage. And if we simply apply that voltage to this CL, which is the test object, that's not correct. Why? Because every test object the manufacturers make to withstand a certain voltage, and there is a standard for that. So if it is say 33 kV, uh, let's say porcelain insulator, then that will have a very clear withstand voltage. Now, if I go by this turns ratio, then that withstand voltage will appear across the transformer terminal. But because of the negative voltage regulation, the voltage that will appear across CL will be 25% higher. So this equipment will fail in the testing in the lab. But that's not the fault of the equipment. It is fault of our testing procedure. But the point is, see, this we have to know technically. That's the difference between a technician and an engineer. And you are all high voltage engineers, or rather studying high voltage at Jadavpur University. So you should be aware of this sort of technicalities. So therefore, we should never perform test anywhere, wherever you will be working later on. Please don't test by multiplying by the trans ratio. You have to always actually measure the voltage across the test object by placing a suitable voltmeter which can measure this high voltage. So there is a small problem. It is given here. Just have a look at it, then I will explain what is stated in this problem. It says there is a transformer whose trans ratio is given, and then it is stated that a cable is being tested and test voltage is 150 kV. That means across the cable I have to have cable insulation. Please remember, it is across the cable insulation. And the short circuit impedance of the transformer is 16%. So how much voltage I have to apply to the primary? That means, for example, this is because, say, I don't have a voltmeter to measure 150 kV. So how do I do? Should I not test? No, we'll do the test by knowing our technical, details. So what I will do, we'll calculate the voltage regulation, and from that, what should be the voltage at the primary, that is the low voltage side. Then we'll put a low voltage voltmeter and we'll apply the voltage accordingly. So V2 is this, Z is 0.16. So from that, using the already established formula, we calculate this is V1 prime. Then we just applying, remember this is V1 prime, which is at this secondary of the transformer. That means primary voltage referred to secondary. So we apply the trans ratio and we find that the voltage that we have to apply to the primary is 252 volts. So there are a lot of voltmeters, accurate voltmeters available even in a very ordinary lab. So I can apply the voltage on the primary as per this calculation. Then when I apply 250 volts at the primary, the voltage appearing across the cable will be 150 kV, and therefore our testing will be correct. This is how we do when the suitable voltmeters are not there. And this is where I am again telling you a good engineer shines in the profession, that wherever you are working, where everything may not be available to you. Say you cannot ask for give me this meter, that meter. So what you have to do is you have to improvise. And these examples that I am giving you are actually this improvisation for your professional life. You have to learn this improvisation, that when something is not available, still how to solve that problem. Now I am coming to a very important aspect of potential distribution along transformer winding. Now you remember that the equivalent circuit of the transformer, typically what we do, we consider the series impedance, that R and L. Again, I am neglecting the uh, magnetizing branch. So as I said, that R is much lower compared to L. So let's ignore R, and these are the series leakage reactances. But please remember that there are capacitances also. Why? Because the windings are so constructed for the high voltage that if it is a disk type winding, then between the disc, it's not a small thing, it's quite a large one. So there will be some capacitance between the discs. These are called the series capacitances. Then between the disc and the tank, where there might be oil as dielectric, so there will be some capacitances. Let's call them as the ground capacitances. So we have the series capacitances, we have the shunt capacitances, which are the ground capacitances. But then you can ask me always that why we have not considered when transformer were taught in your class, because this circuit was never probably taught in earlier machines classes. The answer is very simple, that when we taught transformer as a power equipment, we considered the frequency as 50 hertz. In the case of 50 hertz, since these capacitance values are quite low, they will be of the order of say 10 nanofarad or so, the reactance of the capacitance, that is 1 by omega c, will be very high. Whereas the reactance of the series inductance, which is omega L, that will not be that high. So most of the current will flow through the inductance. That's why it was not told to you. But now here, what we are discussing at high voltage class is not just power frequency. We are talking about several types of high voltages where a lot of transients are there. So frequency, the equivalent frequency is much higher. For a lightning impulse, the equivalent frequency goes to of the order of megahertz. Now, when it is 1 megahertz, something interesting happens, that 1 by omega c, when this omega 2 pi f is 1 megahertz, this capacitive reactance becomes much smaller. Whereas omega L, where omega is, 2 pi f, it is 1 megahertz, this becomes very high, that series reactive impedance. So the currents no longer flows through the inductance, it flows through the capacitance. So for high frequency, the equivalent circuit gets completely changed and it will look like this. Now this is something very confusing to many students, that I am considering a transformer and in equivalent circuit there is no inductance. That is because of the very high frequency that you are considering. And this is typically true for all transformers which handle high frequencies, and if that is of the order of megahertz. In this case now, what will happen? Let me explain. Yeah. Okay, first now let us see that if these are the disk capacitances, then they will be more or less same, because disk sizes do not change. So therefore, at the high voltage terminal here, that is on the right hand side, earth terminal is on the left hand side. I have intentionally drawn it in this way to save space. So the series current that is flowing through CS1, some amount of current we get bypassed through CG. So the series current through CS2 will be slightly less than CS1. Similarly, the series current through CS3 will be slightly less than that through CS2. In this way, we can find that the current that is flowing through this series capacitance is gradually decreasing from line terminal to earth terminal. What is the reason for that? The reason is the diversion of current through the shunt capacitances. If the shunt capacitances are absent, then these series currents will always be equal. Then if I find out what are the voltage drops across these series capacitances, this is very simple, current into 1 by omega c. Since C is same, 1 by omega c is all same, then the voltages, that means V1, V2, etc., they will be directly proportional to the current. And therefore, you can see that the voltages are not same across all the disks. The highest voltage is for the first one because that's the highest current. then gradually it decreases. So it will look like this curve, where ideally this dotted line should be there. That means if CG is absent. But that's not the case, so we get a nonlinear distribution of potential where the initial parts of the winding will get much higher voltage, whereas the latter part will get much lower voltage. For example, in this curve, if you take any vertical line somewhere here, and on the x-axis, remember, this is winding length starting from live terminal on the left side. So if I take 20% of the winding length on the x-axis, and then if I just find out what is the potential difference, you will be surprised that sometimes it becomes 80% in some of the transformers, which means that the initial discs or initial layers of the transformer winding has to withstand a much higher voltage compared to those parts which are nearing the ground terminal. This is true for high frequency operation. And therefore, while designing transformers, you have to take care of that. And now you can understand that whatever transformer design that has been taught to you is not enough. There are several other aspects we have to know if I have to design a high voltage transformer. Because remember, these transformers has to withstand the lightning impulses. So this is what is being all explained here. So if I draw curves for different values of Cg, where Cg is represented as a ratio alpha, that is Cg by Cs. If alpha is 0, that means Cg is very small compared to Cs, then it will be almost linear. Then as alpha is increasing, that means for a given value of Cs, if Cg is increasing, the potential distribution becomes more and more non-linear. Now, how can we adjust that? But before that, this is what I would like to show you, that this is typically a single unit testing transformer shown here, where different components are like one, as you can see, is the iron core. Then here it is two. Two is the LV winding. You know always that the LV winding is placed nearer to the core, because then the potential difference between LV winding and core is lower. If you put high voltage winding nearer the core, then you have to provide much higher insulation. Then 3 is the HV winding, that is this one. Then 4 is field grading shield, that I will explain later on, not now. 5 is the tank, this one. Now 7 is the final terminal, but then the most important thing is 6, that is the bushing. Now here I have to ask you something, that do you know what is a bushing? That means, in other words, I am asking a question. What is the difference between an insulator and a bushing? Anybody can tell me? What is the difference between an insulator and a bushing? Any idea?
The bushing is used to
Yes.
draw out the winding from the transformer.
No, bushing is used in many places, not just transformers. No? So there has to be a generalized something.
Bushing is a hollow insulator
Bushing is a
through
hollow
which the
insulator.
conductor can
Yes,
pass.
that is constructionally you are correct. I would say that constructionally you are correct. Any other, anybody, anything? No? I'm trying to find a photo to show you that exactly how we differentiate between this sort of two bushing and this. Just I'm trying to find out where it is. There's so many things here, no? Because if you see the photos, then things are much more easy for you to understand that what I believe. So I'm trying to show you that. Just wait, I'm searching my computer for those figures. Hopefully it is somewhere there. I know I have these figures. Anyway, then what I'll do in the next class, I will show you this actual photographs so that you can really understand that. Somehow I'm not getting it right now. But let me explain that the fundamental difference is somewhere else. See, insulators are used where we have to support the high voltage conductor with respect to a earth part. That means, let's say the transmission tower. The tower is grounded and the conductor is running, so you have to support it. Now you can support it either on top of the tower or at the hanging position. But in any case, you require an insulator. On the contrary, look at this diagram. Here the thing is that you have a tank which is arched and the high voltage terminal is inside the tank, and this high voltage conductor is passing through that earthed body. This is the important time. That high voltage conductor is passing through the earth body. It's not a question of support. And in all such applications where a high voltage conductor has to pass through the earth body, you have to use bushings. You cannot use insulators. So for example, if some high voltage terminal is inside the lab, then lab has a wall and some outside object has to be tested. So the connection has to be taken through the wall to outside. There you can't use an insulator. You have to use a bushing. So in this way, these bushings are used in our high voltage cases. I'll show you next class. I will find those figures. I will show you exactly that what are the differences in this sort of, so that you will have a real life, sort of idea that what are these. Now coming to this nonlinear potential distribution. So a question will automatically arise in our mind that can I make this linear? The answer is you cannot make it perfectly linear. That is just not possible. But definitely we can improve the nonlinearity. That means making it as linear or as uniform as possible. One such application, one such methodology is the use of trapezoidal winding. You all know this is the well-known expression of C, that is epsilon A by D. Now, if I look at these windings, say this is, look at this diagram. Here at the left side is the core. Then we have multiple layers of the winding. What is happening is that these winding layers, when there are multiple layers, the radial distances increases from layer to layer. So this, as far as the capacitance is concerned, please remember that this is a cylindrical capacitance. The core is here, so that is one electrode, the ground electrode, and the winding conductor is the high voltage electrode, and in between you have the insulation, that is the dielectric, and it is a cylindrical capacitor. So it will not be straight away formula like this, but definitely this D will come at the denominator. So if I want to make this C as same, what I will do is I will change the length of the winding. That means or in other words, look at this here. What we are writing here is that, what is here? R is the radial of the nth layer. L is the axial length of the nth layer, which you can see from the diagram. And what is D? D is the inter-layer separation distances, which are generally kept same. So what we can do is that if we keep this R into L constant, then these expressions will more or less remain constant, and we might get a very closely, the values of C which are close to each other. That is one way of designing. And since as R is increasing, L is decreasing, it's quite obviously looks like a trapezoid. Therefore, these windings are called trapezoidal windings. Then there is something called use of static shield, which I already showed you in here, the number 4. There is something called a static shield that is used at the top of the winding, not at the ground side, but at the live side. How it works, let me again explain. It is something like this. See, this is the transformer winding where all the CS, the series capacitances are there, and ground capacitances are also there. But what we are doing is at the live terminal, we are putting an electrode which is electrically connected to the high voltage terminal, but it is not a current carrying electrode. It is simply, its purpose is electrostatic. How it is happening is that, see, basically what you are getting is that CG by CS. Now CG is more or less same everywhere. If I can increase CS, then also CG by CS will go down, and our potential distribution will increase, or rather improve. Now, what you can see is that the potential of the live terminal is definitely higher than the potential of the junction terminal. So with respect to this shield, which is at the live terminal potential and the junction terminal, there is a potential difference. And we also have the insulation in between. So a capacitance will arise. But this is not shunt capacitance. This is in fact in parallel with CS. So this is contributing to CS because they are parallel. So this CS value increases. So in this way, depending on the design of this static shield, the initial parts of the winding, the CS gets increased. Or in other words, CG by CS gets decreased. And therefore, the potential that was appearing across the initial part of the winding gets more uniform. And this is a very, very simple solution, and it is used not only in such transformers, but in all high voltage winding. I will show you photograph where you can see that this sort of static shields, how they are used in the case of such high voltage equipment. A very special type of winding is there for such high voltage transformers. These are known as interleaved winding. Now the question is, what are these? So let's consider a 10-section transformer winding. Again, I have drawn it intentionally like this so that say space is saved. So in means that is the high voltage terminal, out means that is the ground terminal, and these 10 sections are in series. They are the inductances, series inductances. And as the junction terminals are all different, so there will be capacitance between the winding junctions. These are the series capacitance. Since the series dimensions, that means the length and the diameter and all that is similar to each other, so we will consider that all the series capacitances are same. And the voltages starting from first junction, if I say V, then it is 2V, 3V, ultimately it becomes 10V. That means 10V means the potential difference with respect to the first coil. That means first coil has a potential difference of V, the second one has V, so V plus V 2V, then third one has V, so 2V plus V 3V. In this way, we have total 10V potential difference. This is called continuous connection, which is our normal connection. If we make, and in this case, what is happening, this C, that is the series capacitances, they are also connected in series. So equivalent value will become CY9. This is the equivalent series capacity. Now, if by altering the interconnection of the sections of the winding, that means one is not connected to 2, but one is connected to 3. 3 is connected to 5. 5 to 7, 7 to 9, then 9 back to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 6, 6 to 8, 8 to 10, and back. So now here you will find very interesting, because although physically they are not side by side, but electrically, the first winding has a voltage difference of V, let's say. Then 2 will not be V, because 2 is not electrically in series. Then 3 will be electrically in series, but the individual section voltage is V. So 1 plus 3, this becomes 2V. Then 3 is in series with 5. So 2V plus V, the 5, that becomes 3V. So in this way, we can find out what are all the voltages. What is interesting is that the capacitances that are appearing across the dielectric, they are across the physical junction. They don't follow the electrical connection. So the capacitances are all across the individual winding junctions, and they are also C. That's not changed, because physically windings are same. We have only electrically changed the connection. But what is changed is the voltage appearing across the capacitor junctions. For example, take capacitor 1. Here one terminal is at V, the other is at 6V. So the potential difference is 5V. Take the second capacitor. One terminal is 6V, the other capacitor is 2V. So the potential difference is 2V. So 5V, sorry, potential difference is 4V. So one is having 5V, two is having 4V. So in this way, if you look at this diagram, can you tell me how many 5Vs are there? How many 5Vs are there? You are not getting? Actually, there are 5 instances where you will find that the potential difference is 5V, and there are 4 instances where it will be 4V. Now, therefore, what is the net energy that is stored in these capacitors? So 5 times half C, 5V square, because the potential difference is 5V. 4 times half C, 4V square, because the potential difference is 4V square. So it comes half into 189 into CV square. Then what is the energy stored in this case? Here you see they are all in series. So the potential difference effectively is 10V minus V, that is 9V. So it is straight away half C equivalent into 9V square. Now if you consider that if these energies are same, then we will find that the C equivalent in the second case, that means uh, that means the sorry, this is in the first case. Let the equivalent capacitance be C equivalent. Yeah. So it is 7C3. Now, in this case, you are getting that equivalent capacitance is 7C by 3. What is the equivalent capacitance in the first case? It is C by 9. So therefore, if I take a ratio, that is what is the equivalent capacitance in the second case divided by what is the equivalent capacitance in the first case, you will find it is 21 times. That means this interleaved winding increases the series capacitance by 21 times compared to the conventional connection. Now, increasing series capacitance means Cg by Cs goes down, and therefore the potential distribution becomes linear. But please remember, this type of winding connection is very difficult to make in practice, because how do you physically connect a winding which is in the third position with the first one? In between there is another winding and there is a big potential difference. So how do you bring the connection? That means the wires. Otherwise there will be big short circuits or big arcing. So that's a very typical connection which is not easy, and therefore these are very expensive windings, not commonly used. These are used only for very high voltage transformers where such linearity of potential distribution is of primary importance. If it is a distribution transformer, we don't bother about that, because in our distribution lines, these lightning and other over voltages are negligible. But for power transformers, which are very big transformers, they are very, very important. Now, bushings I have already explained. Then I have to explain now one more thing, that we have to be always understand that there are, you know, what should I say, practical considerations which we can never ignore. Now, what are these practical considerations? Say I have to, in a lab, I have to prepare what? No, I have to prepare a setup for 500 kV testing. Let's say. Now I can buy one transformer which is of 500 kV rating. I can do that, isn't it? Yes, I can do that. Now, the issue is that definitely your size and all those things, that will be quite high, isn't it? Now, three things comes into my mind. That is that how, first of all, it will be transported, but not only transported, then finally, when it comes to our laboratory, the laboratory should be such that we can be able to bring this equipment inside our laboratory. For example, you have a flat, and that flat has definitely a door. Now you have bought a sofa. After buying, you find that the sofa size is bigger than your door size. So what do? This is a problem. You have to always consider that without such consideration, things doesn't work. Next thing is, when you are working with such high voltage components, then there are questions of the clearances. That means clearance from the wall, clearance from the roof, because if there is not enough clearance, you will have problems. So, and the third one is that if you make one transformer of 500 kV rating, then you have to provide insulation for 500 kV between ground and high voltage. I can tell you that if you take the cost of insulation from the practical side, it doesn't increase linearly with voltage. In fact, a thumb rule says that it increases with cube of the voltage. That means if the voltage is doubled, the insulation cost is 8 times, 2 to the power 3. So therefore, if I have very high voltage requirement, should I go for one transformer? The answer is no. There we use cascade connection of transformers. That means here it is shown that let's say I require 750 kV as output. Then we don't go for 750 kV one transformer. Instead, we take three 250 kV transformer. That is transformer stage 1, transformer stage 3. This is the second one. Transformer stage 3. This is the third one. They are all identical in some respect. So basically each transformer is providing an insulation of 250 kV and they are also of much smaller size. Now how they are connected? Their secondary is connected in series, you can see here. And how the primary is getting supply, that is the interesting part. The first stage is actually getting the supply from the low voltage. And then when we apply V, we get V1, we get V2 as the output. Interesting design is that there is a tertiary winding of these transformers, which is having a 1:1 voltage ratio with primary. That means if primary is V1, the tertiary is also V1. And this tertiary is connected to the primary of the stage 2. So primary of the stage 2 gets also V1, so its secondary voltage is V2. Then it has also a tertiary which is 1:1 with its primary, so it also gets V1. So the stage 3 secondary also gets V2. And since the secondaries are all in series, then with respect to ground, which is the terminal of the stage 1, the output terminal will get 3V2. That means 750 kV. But our transformers are all 250 kV and they are connected in series. The only very important point to note is that typically one terminal of the high voltage winding is always earthed and the stage 1 is definitely earthed. But the stage 2 transformer, since its secondary is in series with the primary secondary of the first stage 1, its terminal is not at ground potential. Rather, it is at V2. So you cannot place this second transformer on ground. Then that will not work. So you have to give an insulating support of 250 kV, but this is only a support. That's not a winding insulation. Although it is somewhat expensive, but that can be managed. Similarly, the bottom terminal of the secondary of stage 3 is at a potential of 2V2, which may be 500 kV. So you have to put a much higher insulating structure and put this transformer on that structure. So this is the insulation requirement as far as structure is concerned. Another important point is that, see, if this bottom terminal of stage 2 and stage 3, typically they are connected to their tank. If we don't do that, then what will happen? Remember, tank is not necessarily earthed. The stage 1 tank is earthed. Stage 2 and stage 3 tank is not earthed. They are insulated from earth. So, if I don't connect that bottom terminal to the tank, then the tank will have a floating potential because it has no reference. So there will be a certain potential difference between tank and transformer, and that will cause the output voltage to what is called a floating voltage. That means somewhat reference-less voltage. So that is never acceptable in any electrical engineering application. So we don't keep this transformer tank at floating potential. What we do, we connect electrically the bottom terminal of the transformer to the tank by a physical electrical connection, just like the stage 1. But in stage 1, tank is earthed. In stage 2 and stage 3, the tank is not earthed but insulated from ground. That's a very typical requirement for this sort of cascade connection. This is what is explained here. If we don't do, there will be a floating potential between the bottom terminal and the tank. Now, there is an interesting aspect about the KVA rating of this that I have not told you. I said these are all identical transformers. They are, yes, but there is a small difference. If I start with the stage 3 first, let's say the output current is I. Then this is series connection, so same current is flowing through the secondary of all the three. So what is the volt ampere rating of the secondary of stage 3? It is V2 into I. Let's say it is P. V2 into I. So you know that the primary of stage 2 will also have P. Therefore, tertiary of stage 2 will also have P. And secondary of stage 2, that is V2 into I, that means P. So the tertiary plus secondary has a rating of 2P, volt ampere rating. So the primary of stage 2 should have a rating of 2P. Then tertiary of stage 1 will have 2P. But the secondary of stage 1 is V2 into I, so volt ampere will be P. So total tertiary plus secondary of stage 1 is 3P. So the primary of stage 1 is 3P. Whereas so if I calculate that what is my installed capacity, it is 3P plus 2P plus P, 6P. Because stage 1 capacity is P. Stage 2, I cannot take P because if my capacity is P, I cannot work. So I have to take 2P. Stage 1, I have to take 3P. So it is 6P total capacity. But how much I'm using? The secondary, if you take, it is 3V2 into I, so it is 3P. So only 50% I am using. So that capacity I am not using fully. That is one point. And the second point is the volt ampere capacity of the three transformers. We should not make different because then we have to order separately. Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 transformer. What we want are exactly identical transformers so that all of them should be 3P. Then overall cost of manufacturing, etc., all goes down because they don't have to manufacture separately. So in that case, all three will be 3P. So our installed capacity will be 9P. And therefore, our utilization will be 3P by 9P. So it will be 33%. So these are the points that we must know as the technical details. So it is shown here. The entire calculation is here given. So that if you go through it, it's everything given in tabular form. So if you go through it, I am pretty sure that you will be able to understand. So that actually completes the discussions on the testing transformer. But as I said in my next class, I will definitely show you a lot of photographs so that you can get a physical understanding of what I have discussed. Now this note I will send you so that you can study. So with this discussion is over. But now from your side, is there any question? Okay, I think there is no question from your side. In that case, then let us close this class. And your class next will be on 19th. And that will be, I will take that class 19th, 3 p.m. Please note the time, 19th, that is Wednesday at 3 p.m. Thank you. You can log off.